I want to read you something now that has struck a number of people when it was posted. I'll just give you an excerpt from the totality of the post. It reads, "There is thanks to be given and hopefully something to be taken. Around a week ago, I couldn't get out of bed. Depression had washed over my brain with a familiar leadenness, totally zapping any energy, not able to sleep, and then sleeping way too long but to no effect. It also leads to a feeling that I can't even make eye contact with people. In the words of Larry David, it's pretty good." Those words were written by my next guest, colleague, Kieran Bradley, digital editor of Newstalk. Morning, Kieran.
Morning. A dramatic reading, Anton.
Well, I wanted to do Larry David justice when I got to the quote. First of all, what caused you to decide to write that?
Well, as we all know, LinkedIn's one of the worst places on the internet. I am denied about it, to be honest with you, because, there is a sense that it's a little self-regarding in one sense. I've no problem talking about my experience with depression and mental health. I've thankfully worked in places where it's been greeted, and I've been greeted again by empathetic colleagues, and it's been, very welcomed, which is great. I think in this instance, I wanted to explain to colleagues who might have noticed that I was absent for a few days, and also to a sort of slightly wider network of people, my experience of it and why it caused me to start to make bad professional mistakes. Not necessarily enormous ones, but just the feeling of being off. And you know yourself, Anton, this is a great building and with great people, but it might feel a bit odd and invasive if I kind of sent round an all hands email or something to be like, hey, I've been off and this is the reason. So it felt like the platform to do it, and it feels a bit odd sitting here now as a result of it, but I'm very happy to do so.
Tell us about I think that the term is bout. Tell us about your most recent bout, and then you can tell us about when you first experienced depression.
Sure, yeah. So, slight bit of background here. I actually stopped drinking about 4 or 5 months ago, so I've kind of had a clearer view, I suppose, of the build up of this one. Now, I should say, like, I'm very lucky. Probably only affects me maybe once, twice a year, maybe for a week or so. And this time, the way I visualize it actually was quite like almost a, pardon the metaphor, but a tsunami wave. Like it was quite a slow build to begin with, then more powerful, and then as you are in the middle of it, it kind of it really takes over, and then sort
And
of it
what do you
starts to
feel
recede.
during that process?
Well, for me, like it's difficult to explain. I suppose it's different for everyone, but for me, it's just a gradual feeling that you're just a bit off. Like it feels, particularly when you get to the height of it, actually feels like my brain is starting to shut down a little bit. You just feel very, as I say, wipes of energy. Like my sleep, particularly, is an absolute nightmare. Like you can't get to sleep of an evening, and then wait, like you're just dead to the world in the morning as well. So, I'm keen to say as well, this is just my experience too. But it also, like in a professional sense, just was causing odd interactions or just slower reaction times and so on. And for me, it's like the feeling of your brain being encased in something bubbly, like a lemonade or something. It's really odd. I know it's an odd kind of thing to
As
describe,
in
but
almost like a physical feeling?
yeah, it feels like almost like the film, I suppose, around your brain is a little bit thicker, and things just kind of take a little bit. It takes longer to react to conversations or to decisions, or that's just my experience of it anyway.
What, if anything, can you do to control that progression? I remember I spoke years ago to Alistair Campbell about his own challenges with depression, and he said that every morning he wakes up and he gives himself a number, how he feels. And if the number starts to get high, he has a series of steps that he can do as interventions to gain control over what he sees as a sort of a procession. Do you have the same kind of thing?
Well, I should say, Alistair Campbell was, a real icon, I suppose, of mine. And I think his experience, I believe deals with bipolar, is very different. I have family members who have dealt with bipolar, and their experience is a very day-to-day thing, whereas mine is once or twice a year. But in that instance, when it starts to wash over, I think I've got better over the years as to identifying exactly what it is, really, and just being like, okay, just being mindful, saying to yourself, actually, yeah, there's something a little bit off here, and I've got better, as I say, to speak to people about that. But what I would say is that my experience now of depression is very different to how it was when I was 20. Like the energy and the sleep and so on is one thing, But when I was 20, I mean, I had the sort of traditional, in the ether experience of depression, of dark thoughts and very low mood and very emotional and so on. And it was only, I feel quite lucky in a way to have had that, because that gave me the reference point of what it was for me at 20. But what it is for me now at 37 is very, very different. And that's really one thing that I want to get across, is that it's very different at different times for different people.
Was 20 the first time you experienced your depression?
Yes. Yeah. So like, as I say, excuse me, in our family, like we have a lot of experience with it in one guise or another. But for me, that was the first time, and it was, as I say, sort of by the numbers, if you like, generally speaking.
But that
And
must be very disturbing and frightening. I mean, if you're, as you say, if you're now 37 and you know, okay, I know what this is and I know how it tends to go, the first time it happens, it must be deeply unsettling.
it was really, really scary because, and this is what I would say to people now, is that, it felt like I was undergoing a personality transplant. Like, it feels like you're losing a sense of yourself. You're losing who you think you are, which is a really profound thing to go through. And I was lucky in the sense that I had a support network, both medical and familial, around me to be able to say, okay, something's really not right here, and able to kind of help me. Because the problem is that, like, men are always told to talk, but like at the time when you need to talk the most is when you're least capable of doing so. So you need that support network around you. And I kind of want to move on the discussion, particularly around men's mental health, to when people are telling people to talk, it's one thing. But if you don't know what to say, if you don't have the language for it, if you don't know what you're experiencing, it's very, very difficult to do so.
I assume it is also challenging to find the right person and the right setting in which you can talk. Because if you don't have somebody who is a close, intimate relationship where you regularly discuss things generally, well, where do you go when you want to talk?
Well, it's true, and what I would say is that, I'm no expert. What I would say is that obviously there are local services to you, so psychotherapists, doctors, GPs, and so on. It is difficult though, but I'm very lucky because anecdotally, at least, like friends of mine are good at talking about their feelings and emotions, and so I feel happy to do so with them and so on. But I appreciate that people might not necessarily feel that's immediately available to them. But I would say that my experience 100% of the time is that you will be positively surprised by the people who receive what you say to them. So talk to people. I know I'm kind of contradicting myself a bit, but you have to talk, as in, like, it's really important to do so as well. It's just at times, if you don't go through the sort of by the numbers experience of depression, of low thoughts and so on, you might not know what it is. So just be mindful of your own feelings and emotions, and say when you're seeing changes to your friends, because they might be able to help you. I've been very, very heartened by the fact that many people in this building and beyond have spoken to me about it since then. And yeah, it's fantastic.
Spoken about their own experience?
Yeah, in various guises. And you feel it's very powerful, because these are, we're all fighting our own, we're all running our own race, I suppose. And for someone to tell you their, deepest thoughts it's a very powerful thing. And as I say, it's helpful in that instance to be able to have someone who can help orient you to somewhere that may be able to help you more professionally, like a doctor and so on.
You described the onset of an episode. What's the conclusion of it? What's it like when it is at its peak?
In my experience, it's just it's very difficult to function as you would normally. Like, I kind of want to cosset myself away a little bit, and it's not really. It's a lack of eye contact and things like that. I don't feel particularly self-confident in social situations, whereas normally I would do. And that just makes you want to kind of, push yourself away into a little dark room, I suppose. But it's different for everyone. And as I say, since I've stopped drinking, for example, it's given me a clearer view that I was probably self-medicating at different times, alcohol levels going up and so on. And you're able to now I'm able to now look back and think, maybe my diet's a little bit off here, maybe my exercise could be a little bit better and so on. So I've got a slightly clearer view. But at its worst, I mean, it can be really, really awful. I mean, I'm quite lucky in the sense that mine's sort of on the less severe end of things. But I mean, if you think where it can go, it's quite scary.
When you're in that kind of setting, I assume it is very difficult to dig your way back out of it, because if you feel, I don't want to talk to anybody, I don't want to have any contact, I want to just shut myself away, how do you break out of that cycle?
Yeah, as I say, to sort of go back to the image from before of the kind of wave coming through, you just kind of, for me at least, I have to kind of wait it out a little bit. You know, there are things that I do to help myself, which is go out for a walk, like get out, exercise, and get the body moving. Try and keep an eye on the, drinking and food as well. It's important. But for me, like, I think I've probably become more familiar, as you said earlier, with the physical feeling of it, almost the physical feeling in the brain. And so I can kind of within that tell myself, oh, you're sort of in the worst of it now, but it'll start to break. It's like a fever almost that kind of breaks eventually. But everyone's different, and I've seen, as I say, members of my family go through really, just totally washed out, sleeping for almost days on end, and it's difficult to watch. And I feel, as I should say, for people who are around me in that position, because friends, family, whoever it is, you want to help, but there's only so much you can do.
As you sit here today, how do you feel?
Fine, great. Well, I'm looking at you, Anton. What can be better? No, but no, I know. Like I probably this time went through one that was about 2 weeks, and up until about Monday of last week, I was not great, and I could still have that physical feeling in the brain. But now I'm back to normal. As I say, I know the run of it for me, so I'm very lucky.
What, if any, trepidation did you have about talking about it publicly?
I think for me, it's not to do with talking about my own vulnerability, if you like. I'm I'm thankful to come from a family and friendship group where I feel very supported in that way. I think it's the feeling that somehow you're trying to make it uh, your own thing, almost like a personality trait, if that makes sense, or trying to get credit for it. And I still feel a little bit odd about that sitting here now, to be honest. But I'm very happy to have spoken about it because, as I, as I've said, like people have confided in you, and it's a really powerful thing. Um, but yeah, the trepidation. I think each time you talk about it, it becomes less worrying. And I've been very lucky with the support I have in here with Patricia and so on with our team to just feel supported. So it's been fantastic. Yeah.
By the way, we're speaking with Kieran Bradley, digital editor of Newstalk, about his experience with depression. Text to say, hi there, I'm currently listening to Kieran and his experiences, and I couldn't resonate more, particularly the sleep aspect, which affects me. It can be a terrifying space to be in, especially when you are doing everything to get back to your, quotes, proper self and living on your own. I found keeping a journal and documenting what works and what doesn't really helped. I'll use it to help me get back out of it quicker the next time it hits. And I always have it in the back of my mind that this shall pass.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's fantastic to hear. I just think, I think placing kind of things that you should be doing for yourself in that in that period is quite difficult. You don't want to hold yourself to anything. You know what I mean? That's why I kind of needed to take a step back from work, because it was like I just need to do this my way, and whatever that way is for that individual is great.
What do you hope, or what do you expect for of the people around you? Because obviously there will be a close cohort where you would hope that you can talk to them, that they can be supportive when is the issue. But you'll now walk out of this studio, and obviously everybody outside is listening to your description of it. And undoubtedly there'll be people thinking, do I say it? Do I not say it? If I do say it, what do I say? So for those people who are in the sort of the outer social circles, what should they do?
Well, I mean, I don't know, to be honest. Like the way I experience it or the way I feel about it will be different to you or anyone else. But for me, like, I'm delighted if someone feels that they can talk to me about it. I've got quite a high embarrassment threshold, so yeah, I'm happy for people to deal with it in whichever way they like, really.
It's interesting, the curiosity that's coming in by text. Are there many states of depression? Mildly depressed, having a bad day, clinical. Men are notoriously bad at talking about this. Well, the way that you describe it, it is significantly different to experience than a bad day.
Yeah, well, I'm a Manchester United fan, so there's a serious mild depression at the moment. But no, but genuinely though, it's different for everyone. And actually, I think the men thing is quite a bit of a bugbear for me, because I think men are actually a lot more emotionally intelligent than maybe a generation or two before, or at least emotionally open. But it's like emotional articulation, which is a different thing. And people need to feel comfortable doing it. And I think actually that a lot of that is almost a full court press from friends and family around you, recognizing little changes and kind of depending on the person, talking to them about that in whatever capacity they can, so that they feel they can open up.
Do you see an improvement in that? Presumably it may not, the problem may not be solved in terms of stigma, but is there less of a stigma than there once was?
I absolutely believe that. Yeah. And I think, without getting too trite about it, I think it does change with each person talking about their experiences. Like, I think, as you mentioned, Alistair Campbell before, I think he was an enormous trailblazer there, particularly for bipolar, because family members who deal with that and the experience they would have had back in the day of talking about it would be wildly different to what it is now. Yeah.
Well, I am delighted that you are in good form and good health as we stand now. That is Kieran Bradley, who is digital editor of Newstalk. And if there is anything that Kieran has been describing that impacts on you, the Smartens course available 116123. That's 116123. And a lot of texts in support, also a lot of texts agreeing with much of what Kieran said. Anton, cutting alcohol out of your life is the most beneficial thing you can do for your mental health, no matter what people think. Not being hungover is better than a night out. Another, I describe depression as being like wading through treacle. If you want to get in touch, 53106 at a cost of 30 cent, or you can get us on WhatsApp 087 1400 106. After the break, we'll be talking a weekend of sport.